Peace, peace, love, harmony, and light. Halito, my brothers and sisters, how y'all feeling? This is Chief Kalanago with another video. Man, as you know, I'm in great spirits out here in the country, out here in Missouri. It's raining and hey, it feels good, you know, I'm warm. So I'm just putting in the work, man. Like I told y'all before, I just want to be the example. You know, I don't just want to talk about this. I want to walk the walk. You feel me? Because just too many people are always talking because it feels good and it sounds good. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said before, there's nothing wrong in talking. As you could see, I do a lot of talking. However, I tell people reality only kicks in when the action takes place. Because you see, when you just talk, you might as well just revert to religion and religious beliefs. In other words, faith without works is dead. Is the same thing. If you're just going to talk about it and not do it, then you're just living on faith. All right. So it doesn't make sense live in one realm of teaching or understanding or religion or practice, whatever you want to call it, and step into the indigenous realm. All of a sudden, everybody is indigenous and everybody's aboriginal. But at the same time, they're not living the life. They're just talking about it. So for me, I want to be different. I want to be the example. All right. And just to be the example, sometimes there are a lot of sacrifices that we have to make, you know, and that is, you know, giving up a so-called convenient life, you know, to be temporarily inconvenient so that in the long run that I would just live a life of peace. You see what I'm saying? Where I could find every day, I could find serenity because there's no bills to pay. There's no food to buy. There's nobody bothering me. I'm not getting tickets. I'm not getting summonses. You feel me? So in essence, what I'm saying is I'm showing you how to live life and not to survive. Now, a lot of people may not know what it means to be indigenous because everybody's talking indigenous now, right? Like I said before, I remember when I first started this, it wasn't that popular at all. Like barely anybody was talking about that on YouTube. And people thought I was crazy, but you know, I never gave up. And look now. So I'm like I said, I'm happy. You know, I'm pleased that our people are becoming aware. But it's more than just an awareness. You see, it's a way of life. All right. And for a lot of aboriginals, I hear they're still chasing money. They're still chasing the illusion. You feel me? They're still chasing the illusion. Now, how can you be indigenous or an aboriginal and you're still chasing paper? You see, you're doing things backwards. That's not what this is about. This is about going back to the land and honoring our ancestors and living a life out of the beast. You feel me? Living a life out of their zones, their codes, their uniform. You feel me? Get out of this system. Stop being a slave. That's what this is about. But you're an aboriginal and you're still chasing money. You're still chasing the come up in their world. You could never beat them in their world. Never beat them in their world. Because you have to abide by their rules. You have to abide by their codes. All right? You have to wear their uniform. And what I'm teaching you is to live an organic life. I'm teaching you how to beat their system. That's what I'm teaching you. I'm teaching you how to master, be the master again, opposed to the slave. All right? So if the United States is bankrupt, right, by borrowing money from all these different bankers and all these different nations so that it could become a superpower, what happened? The United States money hasn't had any value since 1933. So they are in debt. I'm talking about they are in debt. That's why this is about to fall. So why would aboriginals go put themselves in a position where they are going to put themselves in debt again, chasing paper money, chasing the come up? No, brothers and sisters, the real value, you're missing the whole point. Everything comes from the earth. Even your body comes from the ground. And guess where your body is going when when you make your transition? Your body is going back to Mother Earth. So it's all about Mother Earth. You feel me? That is the goal. That should be the key. Going back to the land. And anyone who misses that, trust me, you are not on the right path. And that is a fact. That is a fact. All right. So what I'm going to talk to you about in this video, it will be a little bit lengthy. However, it's educational. Okay. I'm going to break down to you what it means to be indigenous. All right. I'm going to break down to you what it means to be an aboriginal of the land, because I don't think a lot of people get the full spectrum of what it means to be an aboriginal or be indigenous to the Americas. Because if you knew exactly what it meant, that is what you should be striving for, and not striving to stay in the beast, not striving to stay in Babylon, not striving to be part of their system, chasing paper. Okay? Our ancestors, that was the worst thing that happened to our ancestors. So why are people here chasing that right now? And all I'm just saying, you have to open up your eyes to see who is real about this. Okay? Open up your eyes to see who is leading you into more bondage. Open your eyes and ears and see and hear who is leading you back into slavery. I am teaching you and showing you how to free yourself, how to be the master of self. Okay? How to be the master of the system. So I'm going to use this opportunity to break down UNDRIP for you. Now, a lot of y'all may have heard of UNDRIP, which is the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous People. And of course, this declaration has been, in the works for over 30 years. And a lot of indigenous countries came together because the colonizers, the invaders, and other cultures, literally came into our indigenous land and in indigenous land around the world, basically, and just simply disrespecting the indigenous people. Okay? Many forms of genocide. Okay? The biggest Holocaust in my own opinion, is the American Holocaust. And nobody's talking about that. So indigenous people got tired and they fought back. And a lot of people put a lot of work into that. Okay? So that indigenous people could get the respect that is due to them, especially in their ancestral lands. Now, for you to know exactly what that means, I'm going to break it down to you. And by all means, I mean, if you cannot get this, then maybe you'll get it when you reincarnate again. But it's very, very, very simple. I'm showing you how to win. I am teaching you how to win. Stop chasing the illusion, my brothers and sisters. Don't put yourself in more debt. Okay? Don't do it to yourself. Don't do it to your children and their children. We have an opportunity that we could change the whole paradigm of our existence in our land. But first, you have to know what it means to be indigenous. You have to know the rights that you have. Okay? And you will only get the respect if you step up and make sure the system acknowledges it and respect it and make sure it's implemented. All right? The platform is already set. What are you waiting for? Why are you so distracted? Okay? Why aren't you being more proactive? Why are you being so laxy-daisy? Why are you being so nonchalant? Brothers and sisters, the time is now. Okay? And that's why I am moving in the way that I'm moving. I am living by example. I have taken the initiative to show you that this is possible and how it needs to be done. Okay? So with that being said, we're going to take it from the top. All right? United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and that's UNDRIP. The General Assembly, guided by the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations, and good faith in the fulfillment of the obligations assumed by states in the accordance with the Charter, affirming that indigenous peoples are equal to all other peoples, while recognizing the right of all peoples to be different, to consider themselves different, and to be respected as such. All right. I'm going to, once again, when I read to understand. Okay. I read to comprehend. I don't read to finish. So I'm going to take my time. Do me a favor, please. Go to Google. If you don't have a copy of UNDRIP, go to Google and put UNDRIP. All right. UNDRIP, and then look for the PDF. And please follow along with me, because it's really important that you get the significance of this declaration. All right. And please, let us not play, with the semantics of words. Okay. We are going to look at this for exactly what it is and what it means to indigenous people. All right. Okay. Here we go. Affirming also that all people contribute to the diversity and richness of civilizations and cultures which constitute the common heritage of humankind. Affirming further that all doctrines, policies, and practices based on or advocating superiority of peoples or individuals on the basis of national origin or racial, religious, ethnic, or cultural differences are racist, scientifically false, legally invalid, morally condemnable, and socially unjust. Reaffirming that indigenous peoples in the exercise of their rights should be free from discrimination of any kind. Now, we are talking about rights here. We're not talking about privileges. Right now, you have privileges because you call yourself a citizen of the United States, which is a corporation. Okay, you are a ward of the state. So you only have privileges. They look at you as chattel. They look at you as property. So the privileges that you have can be taken away, and I promise you, they are slowly being taken away. However, we have rights as indigenous people. Rights meaning that they cannot be taken away, or they should not be taken away by any institution or by any other man or woman, because those rights came from the Creator. Okay? So you have a choice to make. Do you want to rock with privileges, or do you want to stand up for your rights? Okay? Reaffirming that indigenous peoples in the exercise of their rights should be free from discrimination of any kind. All right? Of any kind. Concerned that indigenous peoples have suffered from historic injustices as a result of inter alia. Inter alia means an other. Their colonization and disposition of their lands, territories, and resources, thus preventing them from exercising, in particular, their right to development in accordance with their own needs and interests. So essentially what they're saying here is, we indigenous people, we have our own culture. We have our own needs. We have our own interests, and it may not be the same as other cultures. So therefore, this declaration is making a statement that they need to respect our needs and interests based on our own culture. Okay? Now, recognizing the urgent need, the urgent need. So once again, I keep talking to you guys about the urgency. But for some reason, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's like you get pulled to the left and the right, and I'm trying to keep you focused. It's an urgency. Okay? So my brothers and sisters, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this because I just love to talk. No, I know the urgency. Okay? I know the importance of making sure that you get this. And that's why I do what I do. All right? Recognizing the urgent need to respect and promote the inherent rights, of indigenous peoples, which derive from their political, economic, and social structures, and from their cultures, spiritual traditions, histories, and philosophies, especially their rights to their lands, territories, and resources. Okay, I'm going to read that again. Recognizing the urgent need to respect and promote the inherent rights of indigenous peoples, which derive from their political, our own political, our own economic, our own social structures, all right, and from our own culture and our spiritual traditions, our histories and philosophies, especially our rights to our lands. Now, can you guys see where I'm going with this? Your freedom is in the land. Your richness is in the land, not chasing paper money and putting yourself in more debt from other countries. That is how we are in the situation that we are in today. By chasing paper, by chasing the come up. I am showing you how to free yourself and how to be the wealthiest man and woman on the face of the planet, because we are going to get back our land. We are going back to the land. But people are chasing the illusions and they're chasing false prophets. Y'all better wake up and recognize what's going on. Recognizing also the urgent need to respect and promote the rights of we indigenous people affirmed in treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements with states. So now we could hold states liable for not honoring treaties because of this declaration. All right. Welcoming the fact that we indigenous people, all right, I mean, they don't have we in there, but I want to personalize it a little more. So whenever I see indigenous peoples, I'm going to say we, because it's about us. OK, just so you know, welcoming the fact that we indigenous peoples are organizing ourselves for political, economic, social, and cultural enhancement. And in order to bring to an end all forms of discrimination and oppression wherever they exist or they occur. All right. So now they are welcoming the fact that we indigenous people are organizing ourselves politically. And that's what I'm doing. So I don't know how many of y'all that are getting this or missing this. I mean, literally the support I should have had, man, I should have been overwhelmed right now. But for some reason, it's like I'm begging people to see this. I'm struggling for people to see this and step up. I hear people say, well, Chief, I hear you, but who's making the move? Who's getting in touch with me? Who's telling me, hey, Chief, you know what? What do you need? How can I assist you? How can we make this happen? That I'm waiting on you guys and our social and cultural enhancement. And in order to bring an end to all forms of discrimination and oppression wherever they exist. Convinced that control by we indigenous peoples over developments affecting us and our lands, territories, and resources will enable us to maintain and strengthen our institutions, cultures, and traditions, and to promote our development in accordance with our aspirations and needs. So once again, the declaration is giving you everything that you need. But you see, you are chasing once. You don't want freedom, okay? You don't want to have your own political system. You don't want to have your own institutions. You don't want to develop your own culture. You don't want to develop your own traditions, okay, according to your own need. Because you are chasing the dream. You are chasing the fiat currency. You are chasing people who are chasing money. When money comes from the land. I'm showing you how to be a king and a queen again, but you want to be a slave. The choice is yours. Recognizing that respect for indigenous knowledge, cultures, and traditional practices contributes to a sustainable and equitable development and proper management of the environment. Okay? It is essential that they definitely acknowledge and have respect for our knowledge, our culture, our traditions. All right? Because it definitely contributes to the sustainable and equitable development and proper management of the environment. And because we are not in our proper place, everything is falling apart. All right? So you have to realize that. Emphasizing the contribution of the demilitarization of lands and territories of we the indigenous peoples to peace. So they're saying that, you know, we have a right to make sure that they demilitarize our lands. We have a right to tell them, hey, you know what? Get out. We don't need that here. Our lands and our territories. Our economic and social progress and development, understanding and friendly relations among nations and peoples of the world. Okay? I am showing you guys how to build. Okay? How to free yourself and be recognized internationally. But you want to be a domestic slave. All right? My brothers and sisters, hearken to my words of wisdom. Recognizing, in particular, the right of we, the indigenous families, our indigenous families and communities, to retain shared responsibility for the upbringing, training, education, and well-being of our children, consistent with the rights of our children, of the child. So I'm teaching you how you are able to come to the land, teach your own children, because that's your right as an indigenous man or woman. And they cannot stop you from doing that. I am showing you how to come out of the beast. Free yourself. Okay? Stop being a slave. Considering that the rights affirmed in treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements between states and indigenous peoples are, in some situations, matters of international concern, interest, responsibility, and character. Like I said before, you call yourself Black or African American, you get killed in the street. It's a domestic issue. Okay? Because you are private property. The international platform cannot get involved. They will not get involved because you cannot tell a man what to do with his private slaves. However, when you are in your indigenous capacity and you're walking around with your feathers, guess what? And they touch you and they harm you, then it becomes an international concern. My brothers and sisters, can you see where I'm going with the truth? Okay? Stop living the illusion. Stop chasing men and women that's going around telling you put yourself in more debt. Okay? They are no different from pastors and preachers in churches taking away from our communities and not giving back. All right? Considering also that treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements and relationship they represent are the basis for the strengthened partnership between indigenous peoples and states. Okay, you hear that? Partners. We aren't supposed to be their subjects. We are supposed to be partners because this is our land. So let me ask you a question, right? Would you rather be a partner in with the Lakers basketball team? Or would you rather be a player? I'm going to ask you again. Would you rather be a partner, okay, owning the LA basketball team or the Golden State, whichever one you choose? Would you rather be a partner owning Golden State? Or would you rather be a player on the team that is subjected to all the rules and you could get fired? Your privileges could be taken anytime. I am showing you guys how to be a partner. Okay, how to step up, and no decisions can be made without you. But y'all chasing the dollar bills. Y'all chasing the fiat currency. All right. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong in having money. I'm not saying that. But our goal is to get out of that system. Let us use it to build our indigenous lives. Okay? Let us use it to build our indigenous communities, where we are not in their jurisdiction. And while we're doing that, they cannot force us to do anything because we could sue them. We could sue for redress. And I'll prove all that to you. Acknowledging that the Charter of the United Nations, the International Convention on Economics, Social and Cultural Rights, and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, as well as the Vienna Declaration and the Program of Action, affirm the fundamental importance of the right to self-determination of all peoples, by virtue of which they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. You hear that? The right to self-determination. Self-determination. In other words, you have the right to determine, okay, your life, your future, your political status. So stop being a slave. Stop being black. Stop being African American. Stop saying that you are a Moor, okay, when you're actually an American Aboriginal. Moors are Africans, and yes, they are indigenous, but they're indigenous to Africa. Okay? We are indigenous Americans, American Aboriginals. You feel me? Bearing in mind that nothing in this declaration may be used to deny any peoples their right to self-determination, exercised in conformity with international law. Once again, I am showing you how to get the protection from international law. Okay? It says, bearing in mind that nothing in this declaration may be used to deny any people their right to self-determination. You feel me? So if I step up and I say, this is my ID and this is who I am, they cannot force us to have their real ID. My brothers and sisters, are you seeing where I'm going with this? Do you comprehend the significance of what I am talking to you today about? All I could do is bring the facts to you. Man, listen, you do what you want with the rest. Convinced that the recognition of the rights of we the indigenous peoples in this declaration will enhance harmonious and cooperative relations between the state and we the indigenous peoples. So it's saying that, all right, they are convinced that by the states recognizing the rights of us, or we the indigenous people, all right, or the rights that are laid out in this declaration, it will enhance a harmonious and cooperative relationship between us and the states. And it will. It will. Because right now, they're forcing us and we are getting rebellious. And it's either they give us resolution or there will be a revolution. It's that simple. When you push our backs against the wall, it's only so much we could take. The same thing happened to them. When they came here as slaves, all right, their masters that was in Britain wasn't treating them right. They were lying to them. Okay, they didn't honor any of the promises. What they did, they fought back and they supposedly won their independence, right? So when they keep pushing us against the wall, what do you think is going to happen? We're going to stand up and fight back. But all that is not necessary. We could resolve this if we stand up as the indigenous people and make sure that they honor this declaration. All right? And it says, and states and indigenous peoples, based on the principles of justice, democracy, well, I say republic because this democratic system is the problem, respect for human rights, non-discrimination, and good faith. Encouraging states to comply with and effectively implement all their obligations as they apply to indigenous people under international instruments, in particular those related to human rights, in the consultation and cooperation with the peoples concerned. Emphasizing that the United Nations has an important and continuing role to play in promoting and protecting the rights of indigenous people. So if we are operating in our indigenous capacity and they are not honoring the declaration, then all we have to do is step up, go to the UN and make sure that it's implemented, it's respected, and our rights are respected. It is that simple, because now it becomes an international concern, opposed to you being a slave, you being black, you being African American. All right. Guess what? You have no rights because you are private property. Okay. Believing that the declaration is a further important step forward for the recognition, promotion, and protection of the rights and freedoms of we the indigenous peoples, and in the development of relevant activities of the United Nations system in this field. Recognizing and reaffirming that we the indigenous individuals are entitled without discrimination to all human rights recognized in international law, and that indigenous peoples possess collective rights which are indispensable for our existence. You hear that? Our rights are indispensable. In other words, it cannot and it should not be compromised, okay, or bought. Well-being and integral development as peoples. Recognizing that the situation of we the indigenous peoples varies from region to region and from country to country, and that the significance of national and regional particularities and various historical and cultural backgrounds should be taken into consideration. So in other words, they're saying that, yes, indigenous peoples are distinct and different even if they are indigenous. All right. And situations may vary or differ based on their environment. So the states have to adjust. Okay, they have to adjust, not us. We don't have to make that adjustment. They have to adjust to our way of life because we are the indigenous people of the land. All right. Solemnly proclaims the following United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as a standard of achievement to be pursued in spirit of partnership and mutual respect. All right, let us get into the articles. I'm excited. I hope you are. And I hope you're following with me. Read along with me. Make sure your children have a true understanding of what it means to be indigenous and the rights that we have as indigenous people. And when you call yourself anything other than who you are, you step out of your rights and then you step into privileges. Okay. And with privileges, they can be taken away. All right. Article 1. Indigenous peoples have the rights to full enjoyment. It didn't say half, but full enjoyment. The right. It didn't say a privilege. It says the right to full enjoyment as a collective or as individuals. So therefore, yes, you could be part of a nation, you could be part of a society, you could be part of a group, and you could be an individual. It's still, if you're an individual, it doesn't mean that you are not indigenous. Okay? So you could just have your dossier with your dossier ID and make moves. Or you could be part of a nation, a group, or a society of indigenous people. Okay, of all human rights and fundamental freedoms as recognized in the Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Human Rights, and international human rights law. So you see, when they're dealing with indigenous people, now we are stepping into an international arena, opposed to you being a slave, okay, or a United States citizen, or being black or African American, being stateless, being property. Then it becomes a domestic situation, and once again, a master have the right to do what he wants with his slave. It doesn't mean it's moral, but they have a right to do what they want with their slave. Okay, so once again, I am showing you how to free yourself. Article 2. Indigenous peoples and individuals are free and equal to all other peoples and individuals and have the right to be free from any kind of discrimination. It didn't say some form of discrimination. It says any form of discrimination. So therefore, if you go to your job and request or require your job to update your identity or your ethnicity or your race in their system and they refuse to do it, then you could sue them. Okay? If you go to your job and let them know that having a social security number is not part of my culture, I'm indigenous, I'm an American Aborigine, okay? I would like to withdraw that number from your system, all right? And they fire you, they got a lawsuit, okay? If your job wants to force you to pay taxes, federal taxes on their job or on your job, then guess what? And you said, I believe that I am tax exempt, and they still want to take it, you could sue them. If they fire you, you could sue them because that's not part of our culture, because we are indigenous. Are you hearing me today? All right. Article 3. Where we at right here? Give me a second here, guys. I'm doing so many things. Like I'm literally going through the declaration right now, and I'm uploading another video on another computer. So like I said, man, I'm here working for you, working hard on your behalf 24/7. Article 3. We, the indigenous people, have the right to self-determination. You see, self-determination. In other words, the government cannot determine what our life should be. Okay? The government cannot determine who we are supposed to be. The government cannot determine what's best for us. We have that right to self-determine. You feel me? By virtue of the right, they freely determine their political status. Okay? We freely determine our political status. So that means if we say that we are the American Aborigines, then that's who we are. If we are indigenous to the land, that's who we are. They cannot deny that. They cannot strip us away from that. They cannot take that from us. It's our right. All right? And we ain't got to prove nothing to them. All we have to say, that's who I am. I am that I say I am. It is that simple. Okay? and freely pursue our economic, social, and cultural development. In other words, if I so choose to take a basket of lemons, okay, and go on the side of the street and sell them, then that's my right, because I am pursuing my economic growth. And I don't need a license for that. But you only need a license when you are property, when you are black, when you are African American, because now you're dealing with their codes. You are wearing their uniform, so you have to be in the codes. You have to abide by the codes. Once again, open up your mind. I am showing you how to free yourself. All right? Number 4, we the indigenous peoples, in exercising our right to self-determination, have the right to autonomy. Okay, autonomy or self-government. You hear that? That's why they have to deal with us from a government-to-government basis. All right, and that's also emphasized in House Resolution 331, which I will go over in another video. All right, in matters relating to our internal and local affairs, as well as ways and means for financing our autonomous functions. All right. In other words, to be autonomous, it means that you stand on your own. You are able to take care of yourself. And we have a right to find ways in financing our autonomy. So like I said, if I want to take, whether it's grapefruit or whatever, and go on the side of the road and sell it, they cannot hassle me. If they do, they get a lawsuit because I'm indigenous. All right. Now, if you go selling marijuana, you will go to jail. But if you sell herb, that's part of our culture. You feel me? It's all in the language. I don't know what marijuana is. As a matter of fact, I used to have an auntie named Marijuana, and me and her don't get along. I don't talk to her no more. So I don't know who marijuana is, but I know the Most High gave us herb for the healing of the nation. And that could be a way of financing my autonomous indigenous self. All right. So I'm just letting y'all know what's going on. I mean, I don't smoke, but I'm just letting you know, for those of y'all who smoke, when they catch you with marijuana, you get arrested for smoking a patent word. You don't get you don't get arrested for smoking herb. You get arrested for smoking a patent word, which is marijuana, and you're smoking the patent word without a license or permission. But when you're smoking herb, you don't need permission. You don't need a license, okay? Because you are indigenous, all right? But of course, you have to know how to articulate yourself, all right? So don't say Chief told me this and nah. Read it yourself and get your true understanding, all right? I'm not telling you guys to do anything because you are still a ward of the state and property of the state, because now you're violating their code. You have to get your political status corrected. So y'all think it's a game. Article 5. We the indigenous peoples have the right to maintain and strengthen our distinct political, legal, economic, social, and cultural institutions. You hear that? We have a right to maintain and strengthen our distinct political. In other words, if we are government, we have a right to maintain that. Our legal, economic, all right, building ourselves economically, and social and cultural institutions. All right, while retaining our right to participate fully, if we so choose, in the political, economic, and social and cultural life of the state. In other words, we have a right to strengthen our own, but if we so choose to participate in theirs, then we have that right as well. So that answers the question for a lot of you guys who are struggling, saying, well, you know what, if I'm indigenous, what does that mean? Do I have to give up this and give up that? No, you could so choose to participate if you want. As long as it doesn't cause you harm, you have a right and not be penalized for that. Okay? With impunity. But for me, if I do use their stuff, then I always do it with a disclaimer just to protect myself. Okay? Number 6. Every indigenous individual has the right to a nationality. All right? Black is not a nationality. African American is not a nationality. Okay? It is not. So why do you want to be just a color when I am showing you the light? And that is self-explanatory. All right? Article 7. 1. Indigenous peoples have the rights to life, physical and mental integrity, liberty, and security of person. That is straightforward. 2, indigenous people have the collective right to live in freedom, peace, and security as distinct peoples and shall not be subjected to any act of genocide. Guess what? Any act of genocide. It didn't say some genocide, but any act of genocide or any other act of violence, including forcibly removing children of the group to another group. What does that mean? All right. We should not be subjected to any form of genocide. In other words, if you're forcing me to have a social, that's a form of genocide. If you're forcing me to pay taxes, that's a form of genocide. Okay? Anytime you're forcing me to participate in a system that is not natural to my ancestral customs, that is considered genocide or any act of violence, including forcibly removing children. So for all those of you who have situations with CPS and they come and take your children, that's an article you could use to shut them down. But first you have to correct your political status. Stop being a slave. Because they have no right to come take indigenous children. Because indigenous children are not part of their system. But however, they own you. So they own your children by default. So that's why they could come take them. So once again, I'm showing you how to free yourself. I'm showing you how to be the king and queen of the land again. But a lot of y'all are chasing the illusions. Number 8. 1. Indigenous peoples and individuals have the right not to be subjected to forced assimilation and destruction of our culture. In other words, they shouldn't force us to do anything we don't want to do. So once again, if I tell you that I am tax exempt, you cannot force me to pay. That means you're forcing me to assimilate. Okay? If part of my culture is we don't need a license for anything and you are forcing me to have a license, you are forcing me to assimilate. That's a lawsuit. Okay? If my children are in school and you want to force them to take vaccinations and that's not part of our indigenous culture, you are forcing us to assimilate. Okay? You are forcing us to assimilate. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. All right? So brothers and sisters, we have to get this. All right? We have to get this. We have to. Okay? Step up, brothers and sisters. Step up. Number 2, states shall provide effective mechanisms for prevention of and redress. You hear that? States shall provide effective mechanisms. The mechanisms got to be effective for the prevention of and redress for. Redress meaning that I could sue you for any action which has the aim or effect of depriving them, which is us, of our integrity. All right, just our integrity alone. Now, integrity is something intangible. You cannot touch integrity. You cannot see integrity. But if you are affecting, if there's any action depriving me from my integrity, I could sue you. That's how much we could make their life miserable. All right, as distinct people or of our cultural values or ethnic identities. So once again, if I tell you herb is part of my culture because I'm indigenous and you want to arrest me or you want to give me a ticket, I will sue you and win. Okay? And our ethnic identity. So if you ask me for an ID and I present it to you, you cannot tell me it's not valid. All right? And that's why we have to step up. So when the Real ID Act come into play, we don't have to be forced to assimilate because we have our own IDs. All right. And we should be able to fly on planes domestically and also international. That's why I'm working so hard to put those things in play. But my brothers and sisters, I need you to step up with me. I cannot do this alone. Okay. Stop chasing the dream. Stop chasing the illusion. Stop chasing people who are chasing paper. All right. I am showing you how to be a ruler again, not a slave. B, any action which has the aim or effect of disposing them of our lands, territories, or resources. So when we have our land, you shouldn't be paying taxes on your land because you're indigenous. But you see, y'all afraid, y'all scared. There's no need to be afraid. You got to step up and stand up. Okay? When I have my land, okay, what we going to put on there? We're going to put indigenous property right off the back, so they know what that means. All right? C, any form of forced population transfer which has the aim or effect of violating or undermining any other rights. Okay? Typical example, the Trail of Tears. That's what it means. Any form of forced population transfer. Taking one set of indigenous people and transferring them to another location. Okay? Brothers and sisters, open up your eyes, man. D, any form of forced assimilation or integration. All right? In other words, they cannot force us to integrate. If we have our own communities, everybody else is doing it. When we do it, they get mad. So they cannot force us. They cannot force us to assimilate or integrate. All right? We have a right to build our own communities. Okay? E, any form of propaganda designed to promote or incite racial or ethnic discrimination directed at us. Any form of propaganda. You feel me? So if on my job I tell you I'm indigenous, I'm an American Aboriginal, and you have propaganda on the job talking about, oh, nah, he's from Africa, or he black, or he African American, I'm going to sue your ass. Okay? Because that's propaganda, and it's designed to promote or incite racial or ethnic discrimination, and that's directed at me. Okay? I will sue you I will get redress. Number 9, indigenous peoples and individuals, you hear that, and individuals have the right to belong to an indigenous community or nation. Okay? You have that right. You could do it as an individual or a community or a nation. That's why we have a nation, and we are building strong. All right? In accordance with the traditions and customs of the community or nation concerned. So we determine what our customs are. You feel me? We determine what our traditions are, not them. They cannot tell us, well, you know what? This is not your custom. This is not your tradition. No. It is ours, not yours. Okay? Walking our lands and smoking herb is part of our culture. We did that before you came. So you cannot tell me it's not part of my culture. And I keep using herb because a lot of y'all get in trouble for smoking weed when you shouldn't be smoking, for smoking marijuana. You shouldn't be smoking marijuana. You should be smoking herb, because marijuana is a patent word. You're getting in trouble for smoking a patent word. All right? I don't smoke, but I know a lot of you get in trouble because of that. So I just want to make sure you get a true understanding of what I'm talking about. All right? No discrimination of any kind may arise from the exercise of such right. Number 10, indigenous people shall not be forcibly removed from their land. So if I have some land, you cannot take me out of my land if I tell you I am not paying no taxes. I am tax exempt. I am an Aboriginal, and before you came, I wasn't paying taxes. So I'm not going to pay taxes while you, a foreigner, an invader on my land. Okay? You cannot force me out of my land or my territory. No relocation shall take place without free, prior, and informed consent of the indigenous peoples concerned, and after agreement on just and fair compensation, and where possible with the option to return. What does that mean? They cannot force us to relocate, all right, without our free and prior consent. In other words, they have to inform us, all right, and then get our consent. You feel me? And we have to be in agreement. And also we could seek fair and just compensation, and put in the contract, we have the option to return. You see how much power we have as the indigenous people? But y'all want to be slaves, right? Article 2. 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to practice and revitalize their cultural traditions and customs. That is straightforward. Okay? So our children could go to school with our feathers. All right? Our children could go to school with our indigenous attire. Okay? They cannot discriminate against us. This includes the right to maintain, protect, and develop the past, present, and future manifestations of their cultures. You hear that? To protect it. When you say protect, it means that you have a right to protect what's yours. And any way you use or any means you use to protect yours as an indigenous man or woman, that is your right. Okay? Such as archaeological and historical sites, artifacts, designs, ceremonies, technologies, and visual and performing arts and literature. Number 2, state shall provide redress. You hear that again? The word redress. I love that word. State shall provide redress through effective mechanisms. It has to be effective, which may include restitution, developed in conjunction with indigenous peoples, with respect to their culture, their cultural, intellectual, religious, and spiritual property, taken without their free, prior, and informed consent or violation of their laws, traditions, and customs. So in other words, as a nation, we have laws, right? We could put our laws on record. We could let them know what the laws are, and they have to respect that. Now, if they violate that, all right, they shall provide redress through effective mechanisms, and which may include restitution. You feel me? So brothers and sisters, I am giving you back your power. The question is, do you want it? Article 12. Well, I just said Article 2, so my fault. It was 11, but 2. But now we have Article 12. I don't want to get you mixed up, all right? Or I don't want to mix myself up. Number 1, indigenous people have the right to manifest, practice, develop, and teach their spiritual and religious traditions, customs, and ceremonies, the right to maintain, protect, and have access in privacy to their religious and cultural sites. Okay, so if we say that's one of our sites, all right, we shouldn't be paying to go to any sites on our land, because that's our culture. You feel me? That belong to our ancestors. They cannot charge us for that. Are you guys hearing me? This is spiritual to us. It is religious to us. It is our tradition. It's our custom. All right. Those are our ceremonies. So if we say we want to go and honor our ancestors, then we shouldn't be charged for that. And they have to give us all the time and privacy that we need. The right to use and control of their ceremonial objects, and the right to the repatriation of their human remains. Okay, so if we go and we say, hey, you know what, we may have some ancestors buried there, we want to make sure that we get them, we have the right to do that as well. Number 2, states shall seek to enable the access and repatriation of ceremonial objects and human remains in their possession through fair, transparent, and effective mechanisms developed in conjunction with indigenous peoples concerned. So therefore, if we go to a museum, so to speak, right, and they have some artifacts that's really has significant value to us, we could definitely put in a request to get that back in our possession, and we definitely will have a strong case to fight and get those artifacts back. You feel me? 13.1. Indigenous people have the right to revitalize, use, develop, and transmit to future generations their histories, languages, oral traditions, philosophies, writing systems, and literatures, and to designate and retain their own names for communities, places, and persons. So in other words, okay, we could go and occupy some land and get that land and rename it what we want. And don't call it their state, or don't call it California, or don't call it Atlanta. No, we could create our own. All right. And go to the post office and make sure that we create our own codes or zip code, whatever. I'm showing you the power that we have. All we have to do is step up, unite. But too many people want to be slaves. They want to chase the illusion. Okay. They want to put themselves in more debt. But I'm showing you again how to be a king or a queen. Number 2, states shall take effective measures to ensure that this right is protected, and also to ensure that indigenous peoples can understand and be understood in political, legal, and administrative proceedings where necessary through the provision of interpretation or by other appropriate means. That's straightforward. Number 14.1. Indigenous peoples have the right to establish and control their educational system and institutions providing education in their own languages in a manner appropriate to their cultural methods of teaching and learning. You hear that? So you have a right, okay, to homeschool your children. And if they give you any problem, Article 14, Section 1, you slap them with it and you send them a notice. Let them know you are violating my rights as an indigenous woman or a man, and I will seek redress. So they know what that means. I promise you. But first, you have to correct your political status, because in their system, you are their property. Once again, hearken to the words of wisdom. 2, indigenous individuals, particularly children, have the right to all levels and forms of education of the state without discrimination. That is straightforward. Number 3, states shall, in conjunction with indigenous peoples, take effective measures in order for indigenous individuals, particularly children, including those of living outside their communities, to have access, when possible, to an education in their own culture and provided in their own language. That's straightforward. 15. 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to the dignity and diversity of their cultures, traditions, histories, and aspirations, which shall be appropriately reflected in education and public information. Number 2. States shall take effective measures in consultation and cooperation with the indigenous peoples concerned to combat prejudice and eliminate discrimination, and to promote tolerance and understanding and good relations among indigenous peoples and all other segments of society. Okay, states have an obligation to take effective measures, all right, in consulting with us. Let me ask you a question. How many decisions are being made in your communities and you have nothing to say about it? All right, because you want to be black or African American, so they could do what they want with you. But when we step up as the indigenous people, they have to literally, all right, consult with us and work in cooperation with us. All right, anything that concerns us, in order to combat prejudice and eliminate discrimination. You feel me? All right, and that is of course to maintain good relations. Article 16. Indigenous peoples have the right to establish their own media, their own languages, and to have access to all forms of non-indigenous media without discrimination. Like I said, you have BET promoting y'all to be black. Why don't we have an indigenous program on BET? But of course, too many people, they don't see the vision. You feel me? They don't see where I'm going with this. Sometimes I really think I'm way before my time, man. Because we can get an indigenous program on BET. I know the house. I just need the people to step up with me. That's it. That's all I need, man. I can't do it alone. All right. Number 2. States shall take effective measures to ensure that state-owned media duly reflect indigenous cultural diversity. All right. All programs you see is about you being black and African American. How many of them talking about you being indigenous? So you hear that? States shall take effective measures to ensure that state-owned media, in other words, CNN, NBC, ABC, even if they are privately owned, we still have a right, okay, to request and require that we have a segment that reflects our community. Okay? Should encourage privately owned media. You hear that? Even privately owned, to adequately reflect indigenous cultural diversity. But it don't. Even if it's privately owned. 17. Now, Article 17. 1. Indigenous individuals and peoples have the right to enjoy fully all rights established under applicable international and domestic labor law. 2. States shall, in consultation, all right, and cooperation with indigenous people, take specific measures to protect indigenous children from economic exploitation, from performing any work that is likely to be hazardous or to interfere with the child's education or to be harmful to the child's health or physical, mental, spiritual, moral, or social development, taking into account their special vulnerability and the importance of education for their improvement or their empowerment. That is straightforward. Number 3, and that's Article 17, number 3. Indigenous individuals have the right not to be subjected to any discriminatory conditions of labor and enter a layer, which means an other employment or salary. Okay, that is straightforward as well. Number 18, indigenous peoples have the right to participate in decision making in matters which would affect their rights through representatives chosen by themselves in accordance with their own procedures, as well as to maintain and develop their own indigenous decision making. Let me ask you a question. Who's representing us in Washington, D.C.? Who's representing us at your state level? Nobody. Nobody. Decisions are being made that's affecting our lives, and nobody's there to represent us so that our best interests are kept. All right? Brothers and sisters, all I need is the support, man. That's it. That's it. You know, I'm just saying. Article 19. States shall consult and cooperate in good faith with indigenous people. You hear that? In good faith, not in bad faith. With indigenous peoples concerned through their own representatives, institutions, in order to obtain their free, prior, and informed consent before adopting and implementing legislative or administrative measures that may affect them. Let me ask you a question. When Trump is signing all these executive orders and they implementing all these legislations, who is there to represent us? But yes, it's affecting our lives, right? I want you guys to see the broader picture. I want you guys to see where I'm going with this. All right? Stop being blind. Okay? Stop being afraid. Step up. 20. Article 20. Indigenous peoples have the right to maintain and develop their own political, economic, and social systems or institutions. You hear that? So in other words, if we want what you call not a municipal, but our tribunal courts, we have a right to do that. Okay? So therefore, our indigenous people would be tried in our own courts. Once again, I am letting y'all see the vision. But too many of y'all are focused on chasing people who are chasing paper to put you more in debt. You're too busy with the distractions. Oh, Trump doing this. Oh, Kanye doing this. Oh, Cat Williams doing this. Oh, Kevin Hart's doing this. Oh, Will Smith and Jada. Oh, Nicki Minaj. Oh, Cardi B. My brothers and sisters, get focused, man. Get focused. All right? To be secure in the enjoyment of their own means of sustenance. All right? And the development and to engage freely in all their traditional and other economic activities. 2. And that's 21.2. No, that's 22. That's 20, Article 20, number 2. Indigenous peoples deprived of their means of subsistence and development are entitled to just and fair redress. Pardon me, you hear that? Indigenous peoples deprived of their means of sustenance and development are entitled to just and fair redress. So in other words, all right, if I'm on the site, on the street, hustling oranges or selling my indigenous attire or headbands, okay, or my book, and you want to come prevent me from making my paper, guess what? I could sue you. I could, because I'm indigenous, all right? I am working to develop myself. I want to sustain myself. And you cannot prevent me from doing that. I am not your slave. I am not your subject. You feel me? I was here. My ancestors were here before you came. So you have to respect that. So you don't need a license as an indigenous man or woman to open up a business. You just have to make it known that it's indigenous. Man, I am showing you guys, brothers and sisters. I don't know why don't we have an indigenous car service? Okay? Where why we all got to work for Uber? Why we all got to work for Lyft? My brothers and sisters, the vision, man, is like, I want to take y'all there with me, but I need the support. I can't do it alone. And I don't know why I should be begging for that. Like, I'm showing you guys this every single day. Like, literally. All right? I should be running away from my email right now. I should be running away from my phone. That's how many phone calls and emails I should be getting from you guys. I got too much time on my hand, honestly. I would rather not be talking. I would rather be doing. You feel me? Like, real talk. 21. 1. Indigenous peoples have the right, without discrimination, to the improvement of their economic and social conditions, including inter alia in the areas of education, employment, vocational training, and retraining, housing, sanitation, health, and social security. You hear that? Even as indigenous people, we have a right to those things. For all those of you who are afraid of your social security, as the indigenous people, even if we don't have a social, we still have a right to get health. All right? To get health care. All right? We have that right. And without discrimination, that is. Number 2, states shall take effective measures and, where appropriate, special measures to ensure continuing improvement of their economic and social conditions. In other words, the states have an obligation to work with us. Particularly, attention shall be paid to the rights and special needs of indigenous elders, women, youth, children, and persons with disabilities. Okay? Our elders shouldn't be suffering. Our women shouldn't be being discriminated against. Okay? As indigenous people, we have right to send letters to BET and let them know the content that they have. Okay, it's a disrespect to our women, to indigenous women. All right, and we require of them to stop promoting and advertising this type of music. But once again, maybe I'm just talking, man. You know what? I don't know. I'm showing you the potential here. All right, 22. 1. Particular attention shall be paid to the rights and special needs of indigenous elders, youth, women, children, and persons with disabilities in the implementation of this declaration. 2. States shall take measures in the conjunction with indigenous peoples. In other words, they have to do it with us to ensure that indigenous women and children enjoy the full protection and guarantees against all forms of discrimination. Right? Why aren't we doing that? But you see, when you're being black or African American, they could do what they want with you. But when you correct your political status and you make it known that you're indigenous, it's a whole different story. Because I promise you, they're going to treat you differently. I guarantee you that. They're not going to shoot you down in the streets with your feathers. No, because that becomes an international concern. Oh, the police shot an indigenous woman with her feathers in the streets and her attire. What? Oh, nah. Trust me. Like I said, all I could do is open up your mind. Article 23. Indigenous peoples have the right to determine and develop priorities and strategies for exercising their right to development. All right. So whatever we figure, all right, we have that right to determine and develop and priorities and strategies for exercising our right to develop ourselves. Okay. In particular, indigenous peoples have the right to be actively involved in developing and determining health, housing, and other economic and social programs affecting them, and as far as possible to administer such programs through their own institutions. In other words, you have HUD. You have Ben Carson, the head of HUD. Why don't we have a representative working with Ben Carson, making sure that we have proper housing, and then making sure it's instituted through our own institutions that we have? Sometimes maybe my vision is just too big. 24. 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to their traditional medicines. You hear that? Traditional medicines. Herb is a traditional medicine to indigenous people. However, you're not smoking herb, you're smoking marijuana. That's why you get arrested for smoking a patent word. Once again, I have to reiterate because I know a lot of y'all are going to jail just for smoking marijuana. But I only had this, officer, this marijuana. Well, guess what, officer? I don't know what marijuana is. I never met her. However, I am smoking herb. It's medicinal. It is part of my culture. I'm an indigenous man or woman. It is that simple. And officer, please do me a favor. Make sure that's on record, please. Is it on record? Okay, great. Now let's talk. All right. And to maintain their health practices, including the conservation of their vital medicinal plant. You hear that? Vital medicinal plant. In other words, they're telling you about herb, but they're not going to mention it in there. But they're just letting you know you have that right. Okay? I don't know why a lot of y'all going around trying to get license and getting in trouble. No, man, because you're doing it as a black man or a woman. You see what's happening in Colorado. I think it is Colorado, right? Where, you know, one of the first states who legalized marijuana. You see how many so-called black men and women getting arrested for selling it? Because they taking what's traditionally ours and then sending us to jail for it. And now they want to sell it back to us. But when we turn around and sell it, they want to jail us. You know why? Because you are doing it as a black man or a woman. Because you are still in their system as a slave. You dig? Wisdom. Wisdom. People perish for the lack of knowledge. Indigenous individuals also have the right to access without any discrimination to all social and health services. You hear that? 2. Indigenous individuals have an equal right to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. States shall take the necessary steps with a view to achieving progressively the full realization of this right. Why don't we have institutions for the mental or wellness, okay, the mental wellness of our people? Those are some of the things that I want to institute, but I can't do it alone. I need your support. I already told you I know the how. I just need the people. I just need the resources. Okay? That's what I need. 25. Indigenous peoples have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinctive spiritual relationship with their traditionally owned or otherwise occupied and used lands. Okay? So we could literally go acquire some land and open up a big health and wellness spiritual center to heal our people. All right, territories, waters, and coastal seas and other resources, and to uphold their responsibilities to future generations in this regard. 26. Indigenous peoples have the right to the lands. You hear that? We have the rights to the lands, territories, and resources which have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. You hear that? We have the right, brothers and sisters, to the lands. You feel me? Now y'all see where I'm going with this? But y'all want to be in apartments paying rent. Y'all want to be in cities clogged up. Okay? Get caught up in their zones. You feel me? If something do break out, where you gonna go? They know where everybody stay at. They already got you zoned out. You feel me? Because you are in uniform. So you got to deal with their codes. But I'm telling you here today, Article 26. Okay, 1, indigenous people have the right to lands, territories, and resources which have traditionally owned, occupied, okay, owned or occupied or otherwise used or acquired. So therefore, I could acquire some land and build on it as an indigenous man. Brothers and sisters, I want to take you there. Martin Luther King said, I saw the promised land, but guess what Chief Kalanaga want to do? I want to take you to the promised land. Okay? But you got to step up with me. Or you could do it on your own. That's cool too. All right? Number 2, indigenous people have the right to own, use, develop, and control the lands. You hear that? We have that right. It's not a privilege, it's a right. Territories and resources that they possess by reason of traditional ownership. All the Americas is traditional land. So they cannot pick out any specific land. Oh, well, you know what? You can't use that because it's not traditional land. Get the hell out of here. The entire Americas is traditional land. The entire Americans is Indian country. Okay? Or otherwise traditional occupation or use, as well as those which they have otherwise acquired. You feel me? Number 3. States shall have legal recognition and protection to these lands. You see that? States shall give legal recognition and protection to these lands, territories, and resources. So if we acquire some land and we go to the sheriff and tell the sheriff, listen, it's your job and your duty to make sure that my land is protected, then that's the sheriff's job. Such recognition shall be conducted with due respect to the customs, traditions, and land tenure systems of the indigenous peoples concerned. Oh man, listen, man, I'm on fire. And I'm telling you, ain't nobody going to put out that fire because I'm just going to continue to shine that light. Okay, Article 27. States shall establish and implement in conjunction, meaning that together with us, okay, and our concerns of fair, independent, impartial, open, and transparent progress. In other words, anything that they do, there has to be transparency. Given due recognition to indigenous people's laws. In other words, we tell you what our laws are. We tell you what our traditions are, and you have to respect it. Our customs, our land tenure systems to recognize and adjudicate the rights of indigenous peoples pertaining to their lands, territories, and resources, including those which are traditionally owned or otherwise occupied or used. You hear that? So even if our immediate ancestors didn't traditionally own a particular land, but it says otherwise occupied or used. So therefore I am using it. So therefore you respect it. You have to protect it. You feel me? Indigenous peoples shall have the right to participate in this process. Man, it's a right. It's not a privilege. 28. 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to redress. Oh, I love that word. You see, y'all black, y'all African American looking for reparations. Guess what? You will never get it. You will die before you get it. But guess what? Indigenous people have a right to redress. So if y'all want to continue to be black and African American, go ahead. By means that can include restitution, or when this is not possible, just, fair, and equitable compensation for lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned or otherwise occupied or used, and which have been confiscated, taken, occupied, used, or damaged without their free and prior and informed consent. Let me ask you a question. The United States got 90 million acres of our land. 90 million acres of our land. Have we gotten fair and just compensation for that? No, we haven't. You know why? Because you want to be black and African American. You don't know that you are indigenous to the land. But I hope y'all heard me tonight. Or this evening, rather. 2. Unless otherwise freely agreed upon by the peoples concerned, compensation shall take the form of lands. You hear that? So, unless it's agreed otherwise, when they compensate us, we could demand land, okay? Territories and resources, equal in quality, size, and legal status, or of monetary compensation or otherwise appropriate redress. You know what? They could keep that paper. I will take the land. Give me 90% land and give me 10% in money so I could build the land. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. How many people would rather go get the fiat currency so they could go ball and turn up and then be broke within a year or two? I hear y'all though. Article 19. 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to the conservation and protection of the environment and the production and the productive capacity of their lands or territories and resources. That's straightforward. States shall establish and implement assistance programs for the indigenous peoples for such conservation and protection without discrimination. That's the state's duty. Number 2, states shall take effective measures to ensure that no storage or disposal of hazardous materials shall take place in the lands or territories of indigenous peoples without their free, prior, and informed consent. In other words, all these planes flying over our land, dropping all this, these chemtrails and all that. Why aren't we stopping it as the indigenous people? But y'all don't know the power y'all got. That's the problem. Number 3, states shall also take effective measures to ensure, as needed, that programs for monitoring, maintaining, and restoring the health of indigenous peoples, as developed and implemented by the peoples affected by such materials, are duly implemented. 30. 1. Article 30, number 1. Military activities shall not take place in the lands or territories of indigenous peoples unless justified by a relevant public interest or otherwise freely agreed with or requested by the indigenous peoples concerned. You see, that part right there, it's a little bit bothersome to me. It doesn't really sit too well with me, okay? Because that means that, if they want to use certain part of the land and put military occupancy on there, all right, and it's kind of like, they say it's relevant to public interest, then we kind of have a fight on our hands. So that Article 31 and number 1, I'm not too cool with. All right, I'm not too cool with that. But hey, you know what? You gain some. Hey, you know, hey, it is what it is. Number 2, states shall undertake effective consultations with the indigenous peoples concerned through appropriate procedures, and in particular through their representative institutions prior to using their lands or territories for military activities. Okay, where are the institutions that we have that stand up so that they could consult us? All right, brothers and sisters, I hope you see where I'm going with this. Okay, Article 31. Indigenous people have the right to maintain, control, protect, and develop their cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, and traditional cultural expressions, as well as the manifestations of their sciences, technologies, and cultures, including human and genetic resources, seeds, medicines. You hear that? Seeds and medicines. Knowledge of the properties of fauna and flora, oral traditions, literatures, designs, sports, and traditional games, and visual and performing arts. They also have the right to maintain, control, protect, and develop their intellectual property over such cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, and traditional cultural expressions. All right? That is straightforward. 31.2. In conjunction with indigenous peoples, states shall take effective measures to recognize and protect the exercise of these rights. 32. Number 1. Indigenous people have the right to determine and develop priorities and strategies for the development or use of their lands or territories and other resources. You hear that? Indigenous people have the right to determine and develop priorities and strategies for the development or use of their lands or territories and otherwise resources. My brothers and sisters, I don't know what else I could do here. Okay, I am giving y'all the tools. All right, I am giving you the tools. It's up to you if you want to build a house. Okay, I am giving you the opportunity to come back to the land and get it. Okay, that's where the true riches are. Number 2, states shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the indigenous peoples concerned through their own you hear that? Through our own representative institutions in order to obtain their free and informed consent prior to the approval of any project affecting their lands or territories, otherwise other resources, particularly in connection with the development, utilization, or exploitation of mineral, waters, or other resources. That is straightforward. So it just means that states have to take measures, okay, to make sure that they don't violate those rights, especially if we have resources and they want to come take it. All right, they cannot just do that. There has to be some free, prior, and informed consent, and we have to be in agreement. All right. Number 3, states shall provide effective mechanisms for just and fair redress for any such activities, and appropriate measures shall be taken to mitigate adverse environmental, economic, and social, cultural, or spiritual impact. All right. So essentially, what's that saying? That the states have to take effective, all right, mechanisms. So even if they want to take mechanisms and it's not effective, then they don't have that right. It has to be effective, all right, for just and fair redress for any such activities. And that was meant in the prior mentioned which was 2, all right. 33. Article 33, number 1. Indigenous people have the right to determine their own identity. You hear that? Their own identity. So your job cannot tell you, oh, well, you got to stay black, or you got to stay African American. Oh, really? Could you do me a favor, please? Could you put that in writing? Because that's going to be my proof. So when I come after you for redress, I got proof that you discriminated against me. Okay? Or membership in accordance with their customs and traditions. So we have our own nation. They cannot tell us, well, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you can't be a nation. Oh, your ID is not recognized. No, they cannot do that. Brothers and sisters, I want to take y'all to the promised land. Okay? I want to take you there. Martin Luther King said, I saw it. Okay? He saw the mountaintop. But guess what? I want to bring you to the mountaintop. You feel me? This does not impair the right of indigenous individuals to obtain citizenship of the states in which they live in. So in other words, for those of y'all who are asking, yes, you could be dual citizens. a citizen of your own group or your social group or your nation and still be a state citizen if you so choose. But move very cautiously. That would be my advice. Okay. In other words, make sure you use a lot of disclaimers, like I do. Okay. Number 2, indigenous people have the right to determine the structures and to select the membership of. Give me a second here, guys. You know, my phone just, I do have this here. I know it's still recording. Yes, it is. Okay. Indigenous peoples have the right to determine the structures and to select the membership of their institutions in accordance with their own procedures. So we have a right to be selective who we choose to be a member of our nation. Okay, that's all it means. All right. Article 34. Indigenous peoples have the right to promote, develop, and maintain their institutional structures and their distinctive customs, spirituality, traditions, procedures, practices, and in the case where they exist, juridical systems or customs. You hear that? Juridical systems. Like I said before, we could open up our own courts. You feel me? You feel me? But I want to show you guys what we can do. All right? I want to show you guys what we can do, brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters, are you hearing me? Are you seeing the vision? In accordance with international human rights standards. Okay? We have a right to have our own courts so we don't get caught up in their BS, in their municipal system. And they cannot prevent us from doing that. 35. Indigenous peoples have the right to determine the responsibilities of individuals to their communities. Indigenous peoples have the right to determine the responsibilities of individuals to their communities. In other words, we have a nation. We could appoint somebody to be the prime minister of our nation, the ambassador, okay, a secretary of state, because we have a right to, again, be self-determined. Okay, that's what it's called. Be autonomous. All right. 36. Indigenous peoples, in particular those divided by international borders, have the right to maintain and develop contacts, relations, and cooperation, including activities for spiritual, cultural, political, economic, and social purposes with their own members as well as other peoples across the borders. You feel me? So they cannot prevent us from dealing with our brothers and sisters that's all over the Americas. You feel me? And in the American Declaration, it said that we have a right to travel to our own lands. My brothers and sisters, I am showing y'all, man. Oh, man, I'm just like, yo. Number 2, states in consultation and cooperation with indigenous peoples shall take effective measures to facilitate the exercise and ensure the implementation of this right. 37. 1. What's going on here now? Okay, we're still good. We're still good. All right. We're almost done, guys. 37. 1. Indigenous people have the right to recognition, observance, and enforcement of treaties. So all the treaties that they have, we have a right to go and ask them about those treaties. Let us see those treaties. Make sure that those treaties are lawful. Okay. And that's something that our ancestors would actually agree to. That's our right. Okay, agreements and otherwise constructive arrangements concluded with states or their successors, and to have states honor and respect such treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements. All right, so House Resolution 331, they have a right to honor that. Okay, go look at your states' treaties with the indigenous people, with our ancestors, and let's see if we could use those. Let's pull them out, get the rabbit out the bag and use them to our advantage. You feel me? Number 2, 37.2. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as diminishing or eliminating the rights of indigenous peoples contained in treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements. 38. States in consultation and cooperation with indigenous peoples shall take the appropriate measures, including legislative measures, to achieve the ends of this declaration. You hear that? to achieve the ends of these declarations. Why do you think I'm going to Washington? All right. Why do you think our people are going to Washington? You feel me? Because we're going to make sure that they put things in place for us. Like I told y'all, I'm not just talking about it. I am walking the walk. All right. 39. Indigenous peoples have the right to have access to financial and technical assistance from states and through international corporations for the enjoyment of the rights contained in these declarations. My brothers and sisters, I'm showing y'all the vision. We don't need to be struggling. As the indigenous people, all right, we have the right to have access to financial and technical assistance from the states. You feel me? And also through international corporation for the enjoyment of the rights contained in this declaration. Wow. Number 40, Article 40. Indigenous peoples have the right to access to and prompt decision through just and fair procedures for the resolution of conflicts and disputes with states or other parties, as well as to effective remedies for all infringements of the individual and collective rights. In other words, what does that mean? If we have, as an indigenous man or a woman, okay, we have our own tribunal courts. Now, one of our people got into a situation that kind of like they say we broke their law. But we know their laws ain't laws anyway, because they're just statutes and codes. They cannot just take one of our people. You feel me? They cannot just take one of our people. There have to be a resolution to settle that conflict. You feel me? There has to be a resolution. And in law, in real law, there has to be a remedy. There has to be a remedy. The only time you break a law is when you harm somebody or damages somebody's property. Everything else is statutes and codes. So I don't know why y'all going to jail for statutes and codes. I don't know why y'all paying tickets for statutes and codes. Brothers and sisters, I am just here to be a teacher, man. I'm just a messenger. All right. Such decision shall give due consideration to the customs, traditions, rules, and legal systems of indigenous peoples concerned and international human rights. All right. I'm almost done. I got a few more articles and we good. All right. 41. The organs and specialized agencies of the United Nations systems and other intergovernmental organizations shall contribute to the full realization of the provisions of this declaration through the mobilization inter alia of financial cooperation and technical assistance. In other words, the UN is there to assist, okay? Ways and means of ensuring participation of indigenous peoples on issues affecting them shall be established. 42. The United Nations, its bodies, including the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues and specialized agencies, including at county or country level, and states shall promote respect for and full application of the provision of this declaration and follow the effectiveness of this declaration. Let me ask you a question. In your states, okay, in your state, who is implementing UNDRIP for indigenous people? Brothers and sisters, I want y'all to see beyond the rainbow, man. Beyond the rainbow. 43. The rights recognized herein constitute the minimum standard. You hear that? The minimum standard for survival. We're not even asking for the minimum. We are saying, we are demanding the minimum for survival. Not even for living, for survival. Dignity and well-being of indigenous peoples. You feel me? So, brothers and sisters, man, I'm just saying, it's either y'all want it or y'all don't. That's just all I could say. Number 44. All the rights and freedoms recognized herein are equally guaranteed to male and female indigenous individuals. 45. Nothing in this declaration may be construed as diminishing or extinguishing the rights indigenous peoples have now or may acquire in the future. So we're not just talking about rights. We're talking about, let's just say 2 years from now, we say that this is our right. They have to honor that. You feel me? Okay. Article 46. 1. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, people, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or to perform any act contrary to the Charter of the United Nations or construed as authorizing or encouraging any action which would dismember or impair totally or in part the territorial integrity or political unity of sovereign and independent states. In other words, they're saying that because you are indigenous and you have all these rights, it don't give you the license to go wild out and disrespect those people's systems. All right. So it's about you give respect, you get respect. That's just all it is. So just because you're indigenous, don't feel like, okay, you know what, I'm above the law. It's not about that. It's about respect. And I think that's fair enough. Okay. Number 2, in the exercise of the rights enunciated in the present declaration, human rights and fundamental freedoms of all shall be respected. The exercise of the rights shall set forth in this declaration shall be subject only to such limitations as determined by the law and in accordance with international human rights obligations. Any such limitation shall be non-discriminatory and strictly necessary solely for the purpose of securing due recognition and respect the rights and freedoms of others and for meeting the just and most compelling requirements of a democratic society. Like I said, I don't like a democratic society. I like a republic society. All right. Number 3, the provisions set forth in this declaration shall be interpreted in accordance with the principles of justice, democracy, respect for human rights, equality, non-discrimination, good governance, and good faith. All right, my brothers and sisters, there you go. Once again, Chief Kalanago dropping it for y'all, man. All I could do is just give you the information. All I could be is just the messenger, man. You do what you want with the information. I'm showing you the vision. Martin Luther King said, hey, you know what? I had a dream. Well, guess what? I want to make this dream come true. I am making the dream come true. All right. I am bringing that dream into manifestation. Okay. He said he saw the promised land. I am taking you to the promised land. He said I could see the mountaintop. Guess what? I am bringing you on the mountaintop. What more do you want? Huh? I'm already on the line, putting in the work, setting the example for you. Don't chase people that's going to put you in debt. Don't chase people that's chasing money, looking for a come up, because they will, trust me, they will betray you for money. You feel me? They will betray you for money. Come back to the land. Be organic. That's what it means to be indigenous. Our ancestors didn't have paper money. Our ancestors weren't chasing paper money. No. That's what it means to be an aboriginal. So when people talking about, oh, I'm aboriginal, I'm indigenous, but you chasing money, you are fraud. You are perpetrating. Okay? You are pretending. You are just going with the flow. You see an opportunity, just like people who got into the conscious community and started using people, just like people that's using the word black and African American to make money. They are using indigenous and aboriginal to make money and hustle people. Real talk. This is not a game for me. I don't give a damn about money. But yes, I will use it on the land to develop and build the land. That's what I'll use it for. I don't want it for nothing else. And like everybody could see, I am being the example. All right? I am walking the walk. All I need is just your support. That's it. That's all I need. And we could change this thing around overnight. It's either you want to be a slave or you want to be free. It's either you want to be indigenous or you want to chase paper money. Period. But they don't go hand in hand. They don't go hand in hand. Because to be indigenous means you come back to the land. That's what it means. Okay? That's what it means. To be indigenous means to be, to be autonomous. That's what it means. You feel me? But when you start chasing paper, want to deal too much in the commercial world, then you have to deal with codes. You have to deal with licenses. You have to deal with permission. I am showing you where you don't need a license, where you don't need permission, and still have your land and still make money on the land if you so choose to. I'm giving you the best of both worlds. Once again, this is your brother, Chief Kalanago, dropping the knowledge. Okay? My email is in the link below. My information is always here. For all those of you who are ready to step up, correct your political status, let us step into our indigenous capacity and get back what's ours. Let us rule that throne again. That's where we're at with it. I love y'all. Peace, love, harmony, and light.